legal distribution centers. And so, you have those states, and then you have about 14 states that decriminalize marijuana even for recreational use, in which you'll probably pay a fine, but you're not going to serve any jail time. And so the shift, and then a bunch of states have shifted, to treatment instead of incarceration. So people are sent a treatment program, which might be about $5,000 a year instead of being sent to prison for, $50,000 a year. And so it is slowly changing. And when you look at all the polling is going in the right direction. I mean, I think I mentioned earlier, 50% of Americans want to legalize marijuana, but when you look at it for people under the age of 30, it's like 65%. So, it's largely at this point a demographic game. So, as more and more young people become a voting age, and the people of earlier generations die off, I think you're going to see a pretty major change, and not just in the U.S., but around the world. And the U.S. is lagging behind when you consider what's going on in Europe or Latin America, which is moving much faster, towards treating drug use as a health issue and not throwing people in jail.
I still, personally, I have a problem with this whole medical marijuana thing. Why should I have to go? And I belong to, or I have my own church of THC ministries out of Hawaii. And I have a hard time. Why should I have to go to a doctor? I'm healthy because I've been smoking pot for about 40 years, and I don't have anything wrong with me. I don't have lung cancer. I don't have any disabilities at all, period. And I have a hard time understanding why I should have to go get a doctor's permission to smoke something that God gave us.
Yeah, you definitely shouldn't have to do that. And we're hoping that voters in Colorado and Washington vote on those initiatives, which would legalize marijuana like alcohol, so that anyone could have access, well, not anyone, adults would be able to have access to marijuana. Young people, it would still be illegal, and it would be tightly regulated. Which actually be, in terms of keeping marijuana away from young people, would be better than what we have now, because you don't have drug dealers trying to sell alcohol in schools. There's just no money in it.
I've had so many people. Excuse me. I've had so many people, say, "Well, Clay, isn't marijuana a gateway drug?" Yeah, absolutely. If you got to go to a drug dealer to get it, yes.
Yes. That's what they found in, in Amsterdam, for instance, or the Netherlands more generally. That and marijuana is not exactly legal there, but it's basically legal there. And once they did that, they found that the use of other drugs plummeted because you go into these marijuana cafes and all they have is marijuana, whereas in the U.S. You're looking for marijuana, and the drug dealer may or may not have marijuana, but he also has a lot of other drugs. And so it's prohibition that is the gateway.
What about the abolishing victimless crimes? I mean, I've had a lot of law experts on here tell me that even possessing marijuana, if you're an end user, that's not a crime. That's not a crime unless you got it for distribution. And that's what they kind of try to do in the courts, is roll you into this distribution thing. Oh, well, you were going to sell it to somebody, or you sold it to somebody.
Yeah, they definitely, and it's sales is where they really throw the book at you. And a lot of people who possess, there's a lot of people who aren't drug sellers, who are treated like drug sellers just because they have a certain amount. And so there's this assumption, though, that if you're a marijuana user, you should only have a couple joints on you. But this is probably politically incorrect to say, but there's a reason people go to Costco, for instance. It's cheaper to buy in bulk, and so if you go to Costco and get 100 rolls of toilet paper. That doesn't mean you're a toilet paper dealer. It just means you're trying to get a discount.
Unless you're in Congress. What do we do? I mean, now, if the people that we elect go right into this old mode, and I've just had a psychiatrist on my show. He's just done a book called Blowing Smoke. Are you familiar with that?
It sounds familiar.
Anyway, he's a pharmacist. He's an MD. I mean, he's a psychiatrist. He's an MD, and he says this whole drug war it's based on a wrong paradigm. It's just totally wrong. The people are going to use whatever they want to use, and these we're being criminalized for doing it. When the people that are doing it and actually bringing it in, we don't have the planes, we don't have the boats, we don't have the tankers to bring it up here, like they've been doing for the last 60 years, at least. So the governments are doing this so they can criminalize the population, and so they can keep us as good slaves. Is this a system of slavery? Or just control? What is it control? I mean, it's part of this is you can kind of lump religion in with this, as well as politics. What are we facing here? Politics and religion?
There's an interesting new book out called The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander, which
the what now?
It's the New Jim Crow.
Okay.
By Michelle Alexander, and it makes a good case that the drug war is a new form of slavery, especially with respect to communities of color, who are disproportionately targeted and arrested. And he traces kind of the evolution of when slavery ended, and the forces basically responded with Jim Crow and not allowing black folks to own guns and to force people to be segregated, etc. And then when that ended, criminalization became the way of controlling people, and just by arresting large numbers of black people every year, and a good deal of those are going to get very long sentences, and the ones that come out, can be legally discriminated against in housing, and they're denied all sorts of benefits. And in the South, and many of the southern states, they can't vote. And so, it's a pretty strong case that the drug war is social control. And she focuses largely on communities of color, but it's also social control.
It's part of it's to
the white communities as well.
Their strategy is divide and conquer. They want the blacks at odds with the whites. They want the police at odds with the protesters. Instead of people working together, they want to divide and conquer. Is it? So how do we reach people? I mean, it's you're for drugs. You're for legalizing drugs. You're just an old hippie. You're just an old hippie. You're just an old druggie. You're just you're a pot smoker. You're a patriot. You're a radical. You're a racist. This is all name calling to divide and conquer. How do we bring the people together to make them realize? And I've got video after video after video up on my sites with people telling you that this war on drugs is a whole farce. It's a war against the American people. How do we reach them? All the information's out there.
I mean, part of it is baby steps. What's interesting about medical marijuana in the 16 states is you now have a generation of local and state elected officials who are experienced regulating marijuana. And so they know zoning and taxing and licensing, and they realize, marijuana actually can be controlled. And so, eventually, many of them are going to move on to say, well, why can't we just treat marijuana like this for everybody and not just patients? So some of it is baby steps. Some of it is just pointing out to people that what we're doing isn't working. You actually don't even need to point that out. Everyone knows what we're doing isn't working. And so I think a lot of it's just demystifying. People think legalization, like, why would you want to legalize the drug cartels and drug dealers? I don't want a drug dealer on my street. And so a lot of it is just walking people through and pointing out that all the things that they hate from the drug dealer on the street corner to drug overdoses to the drug cartels, all of that is a product of prohibition. And that if you got rid of prohibition, things would be fundamentally differently. In the same way, Indian alcohol prohibition put the Al Capones out of business, and reduced the number of people, going blind from illegal alcohol, etc.
Well, Ron Paul says we do have a drug problem, and I agree with him on this. The drug problem is the pharmaceutical companies, big pharma, are force-feeding and putting every other commercial on television is for some pharmaceutical that you need to be a functioning human being. They've got a 100,000% markup on some of these drugs like Luvox or Valium that they use to drug the American people. I mean, and they've been doing this for 50 years. My grandmother and my mother were drug addicts. I didn't know. They just went to the doctor every week. How do we deal with...
That's why I sometimes say, that it's not a war on drugs, it's a war on some drugs. So I work in Washington, D.C., and you have all these politicians who, will vote on, something, will vote on a bill that increases penalties for possessing marijuana, and then as soon as they're done voting, they go down the street to the bar and get drunk. And, you have a whole bunch of people who are on antidepressants that, block the uptake of serotonin, but, for those that go out and use ecstasy, for instance, which blocks the uptake of serotonin, suddenly that's a crime. And, we give a lot of Ritalin and other stimulants to folks, whether someone uses methamphetamine or something like that, and that becomes a crime. And so it really is kind of a separation. There's generally a lot of hypocrisy. Much of it, and some of it is based on whether or not you have insurance. So if you have insurance and can go to the doctor and get Ritalin or Adderall, that's legal. But if you don't have insurance and can't get access to the prescription drugs, but buy a stimulant off the street, suddenly that becomes a crime. So it just doesn't make sense to say we're going to wage a war on drugs, but then criminalize certain people but not others. And that's how you actually know it's not actually about the drugs. It is about the social control.
Well, again, they made our grandfathers and who were farmers and ranchers, they made them into bootleggers and moonshiners, didn't they?
Right.
Can't be running your Model T on alcohol. That's we made that illegal, and now you can't grow hemp. I mean, this is the number. Hemp is the number one cash crop. It was referred to in the 30s as $1 billion crop. How can Americans stand by and watch something like that? Our number one cash crop move to red China, communist China. I mean, we got 10,000.
Europe or Canada, and there's all these countries around the world that grow hemp and make hemp products and then sell them in the U.S. And you can buy hemp products, and you can go down to a local shopping mall and buy, a hemp shirt or a hemp candy bar or what have you. And so it's just all of the hemp is being grown in another country, and so we're basically just depriving our farmers of a cash crop, as you pointed out, for no real reason.
Three classes of people in order: the farmers first, intelligentsia next, and veterans and law enforcement that are still loyal to the old regime. That'd be any of us oath keepers that still, remember that our oath didn't have an expiration date on it. Are we going to be able to overturn this, in your opinion, without violence? I've got a gentleman by the name of Campbell that will be coming on that's probably going to be arguing that we're not going to solve anything. Nothing's been solved in 100 years, and governments have murdered 140 million or more people, maybe 1 billion people all across the world in all of the wars that we've had over the last 100 years. how are we going to be able to turn this around? I said the problem I think we've had, Bill, is how do you fight evil without becoming evil? And the only way I know to do that is with the truth. This is what the truth, man. I mean, you know.
Well, and we have, I mean, you know, alcohol prohibition was repealed. A lot of the harsh penalties towards marijuana that were enacted in the 60s and 70s and 80s have been changed. Not all of them, obviously. You know, we have the 16 states medical marijuana, and a lot of states are reforming mandatory minimums. There's this whole right on crime thing in which you have Bill Bennett and other conservatives saying, hey, we have too many people in prison, let's figure a way out of this. And they're not running around talking about legalization, but it is the truth. You know, telling the truth is, I think, changing things. I have no doubt that we're going to be able to peacefully end this drug war. It's going to take some time and some hard work, but you know, not only can it be done, it is being done.
You know, Bill, I've been working in the Patriot movement. I helped start the militias around the country, and folks, they tried to demonize the militias, but what you have to understand is the militia's you. It's you. It's us. It's the American people. Every able-bodied male out there is supposed to be in their militia so we can defend this country. And what's being taken by them making us into criminals, I mean, this ought to be a pretty good block of people. I think one of the things that we've been talking to are the ex-cons out there, as well as the veterans, because both are being mistreated, both are being marginalized, because they're scared shitless of us. I think. This is my opinion. I'm an old biker, and I don't take any crap off nobody. You know, don't lay a hand on me. Don't touch me. Don't touch my dogs. Don't do nothing. Don't do nothing to me, and everything will be fine. I'm an individual. I got my rights. I know what those rights are, and leave me alone. You know, that's an individual attitude that we kind of lose in the whole Republican, Democrat, liberal, conservative divide and conquer strategy.
Hmm.
The rights of
once you have a felony conviction, you know, you face up to 10 years in federal prison for possessing a firearm. Actually, you don't even have to possess a firearm, just possessing ammunition. I mean, there's been people who have had felony convictions from, you know, 20 years ago who, you know, have an inoperable bullet that's like a souvenir bullet that they turn into a necklace that then, you know, suddenly have to face up to 10 years in federal prison. And so,
now, how do they justify this? I mean, how is this justified in your mind? Is this just a war against anybody? I mean, how did they put so many millions of Christian Russians into the gulags and into this gulag system that Alexander Solzhenitsyn described so well in the Gulag Archipelago? How did they do that? And aren't they doing that? Aren't they doing that to us in America right now with all these drug laws, with all the tax laws, with all the ordinances that we somehow violate? I mean, we can't go through a day without violating some kind of ordinance.
Oh, there's tens of thousands of laws. There's so many federal laws that no one actually knows how many there are. I mean, it's scary. And then this is the American Association, you know, saying this, that no one can figure out how many laws there actually are. And that's just the laws. That's not even counting the regulation. And most of them are written pretty broadly. And so everyone is probably breaking some sort of law every day just because there's so many.
I think that has to be done on purpose. Things like that don't happen without a purpose, and the purpose is to keep us subjected, isn't it? I mean, haven't they refined the art of slavery to the point the slave don't know they're slaves?
Well, certainly, you know, any number of us, you know, are in danger of going to jail for something.
What about this NDAA? This basically suspends posse comitatus, allows the government to bring in our own troops against to control us, and they're working on this bill in Congress right now that I believe it's in Congress now, that They could just come pick you up, just come take you away, never have a trial, no proof, nothing. Just pick you up, take you away, and declare you an enemy combatant, and you disappear. I mean, this is a law that's in Congress, Bill. How do we deal with that? I mean, this is if you're speaking out against, a communist-style government, suddenly you're the rebel. You're the one that they're going to put in prison. You're the one that's going to go to the gulags. Isn't that what they're setting us up for right now?
I mean, I think the trick to pushing back is one, radio shows like this, but also just organizing generally. I can't say that writing members of Congress actually helps more than people think. And I know a lot of people write members of Congress and don't hear anything back or hear something and they don't really like it, but it does have an impact, and they are definitely afraid of losing their election, even though that most incumbents get reelected. And so I think organizing and going to conferences and just general organizing goes a long way.
I agree. And one of the plans that I've come up with is really a restoration of the self-sufficient family farm, which I believe is the basis of every civilization, the strengthening and control of our food supply and our energy. If we can establish little communities on ranches and farms and work in cooperation in a cooperative effort as a co-op. The co-ops were very successful in Europe. And we can grow our own food and we can generate our own energy. We don't really need the banks or the governments for much of nothing. I call that project Liberty Village. It's libertyvillages.org. And part of the plan called for staffing it with veterans who are trained to be able to protect the food supply, protect the land, protect the inhabitants, protect the families from anything that might happen. And down here in Arizona, the danger out in the country like that to the ranchers and to the farmers is from the flood of illegal aliens that are coming up here. Carrying the pot we ought to be growing up here. Sorry, didn't mean to roll off into that speech, but
Right.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to point out Arizona, is at least a medical marijuana state, and so it's slowly making steps to putting the drug traffickers out of business.
Yes, that's signed in, but they're still not letting anybody. They're not really, I don't think, being too straight with the people. What about organizing? You talk about organizing. How do we organize? The whole idea is divide and conquer. Well, you wanna legalize drugs? What are you? I mean, come on. They're still trying to do that, even when you're pointing out common sense and facts. Here's the facts. Here's how much it cost you to put people in jail for something they had in their pocket here.
Well, I mean, there's, we have a conference that's every 2 years in which we bring about 1,200 people together who, all have one thing in common, that they believe the drug war is doing more harm than good. And that's Democrats, Republicans, Libertarians, Socialists, black, white, rich, poor, whatever. It's a very eclectic collection of people. And so, we use that as a way to build a movement. And the next conference, which won't be until 2013 because we only do it every 2 years, will be in Denver. That's one way. I always encourage people to sign up for our action alerts, which you can at drugpolicy.org, and that way you can take action when you need it. There's many other drug policy organizations, so it doesn't have to be drugpolicy.org. But that stuff I think goes a long way as well.
Well, we've got links to that, and if you can tell your people about this show, then you can help us promote this show. I mean, I've got details on the whole banking scam over the Rothschild over the last 300 years. History and Mystery Babylon, as well as the drug smuggling operations by the CIA. So I appreciate any help on your end. If we don't work together, you know, we'll hang alone. And I think we're right now approaching, Bill, a pretty critical point in history. Not only is it 2012, but it's you know, we've got things happening here that we've really got to deal with in food and economics. And this is a big part of it. This is a big part of it. I hope we'll send people to your site. And I appreciate you being on my show.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Have a good day. Bye.
Goodbye. All right. Come on, let's work here. Come on, you son of a bitch. Go down. Trying to stop this here, trying to sign off here, and I'm having a problem. So, okay, let's cut this one off.